Okay, Chair, we're ready to go.
Okay. Good morning. The online meeting of the Windward Planning Commission will now come to order. It is Thursday, November 4, 2021. The time is 9:03 a.m. Based on the governor's emergency proclamation related to the state's COVID-19 Delta response, dated October 1, 2021, we are holding this meeting online. This is to maintain physical distancing and prevent the spread of COVID-19. The public can observe this meeting on YouTube live stream by following the link provided on the county website calendar or by using the URL advertised on the agenda. The video recording will be available on the same YouTube channel. The minutes and transcripts will also be posted on the county website at a later date. I'd like to remind all participants the protocol for this meeting. Silence your phones and any other devices near you. Only one person may speak at a time, so raise your hand to be recognized by the chair before you speak. Speak directly into your microphone and keep your microphone muted while you are not speaking. If you talk over each other or if your microphones pick up noise, the dialogue cannot be transcribed. Thank you for your cooperation. With that, I'd like to introduce my fellow commissioners. Please raise your hand when you are called. First off, Commissioner Dean Au is excused today and will not be present. Commissioner Gilbert Alguinaldo, Commissioner Joseph Clarkson, Commissioner Michelle Galimba, Commissioner Dennis Lin, Commissioner Thomas Rapaphy, and I am Chairperson John Replogle. We do have a quorum to hold this meeting. Also in attendance are Deputy Corporation Counsel Malia Kekai, attorney for the Commission, Deputy Corporation Counsel Jean Campbell, attorney for the Planning Department, Planning Director Zendo Kern.
Morning.
Deputy Planning Director Jeff Darrow, Planner Christian Kay, Planner Tracy Lee Camaro, Planning Program Manager Maya Jackson, and Windward Planning Commission Melissa Dakayanan Salvador. Commissioners, I trust you have received and reviewed the minutes of the July 15th, 2021 Joint Planning Commission and the October 7, 2021 meeting. May I get a motion to approve or what?
I so move.
I second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Galimba and seconded by Commissioner Aguinaldo. Is there any discussion or corrections or anything like that? If no, all those in...
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just want to make note that I was recused from one item.
yes. Thank you, Mr. Rapaphy.
Thank you.
And that was just for clarification, that was the connections item.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So all those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Any opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are accepted. So we are going to move on to statements from the public at this point. We have 4 testifiers registered to give oral testimony. For item number 2, Hawaii Island Community Development Corporation, HIC DC, SLU 20-054 is Dr. Lavinia Subniani and Tim Keller. For item number 3, Connections CBESS SPP 12-138, we have Jason Turner and Jeff Gomes. If everybody could turn on their cameras, I will swear you all in together.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, please.
Yes,
When it comes to that, any testimony given for that item, can I be let out of the room, please?
yes, yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody turn on your cameras. I'll swear, please raise your right hand now. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth before the Windward Planning Commission? You should unmute your speaker, your mics.
I do.
So, okay, we're good. I ask that you limit your testimony to 3 minutes. If you've submitted written testimony, there's no need to read the testimony you submitted, but you are welcome to summarize and update your testimony. After your testimony, the commissioners may have questions for you. If there are no questions or questions have concluded, please log out of the Zoom platform and switch to the YouTube channel if you wish to observe the meeting. Okay. So first up, we have Dr. Lavinia Subnani.
This is Tim Keller. Dr. Subnani, due to the short notice and her scheduling out of 3 to 4 months for surgeries, can't make it, so I'll be speaking on her behalf.
Okay,
Right.
so Mr. Keller,
Yes. Both Dr. Subnani and myself live at 847 Kukuau Street. Our property backs up to the proposed project item number 2. We would ask you to consider the ramifications of your decisions of zoning change and how it will impact our neighbors. Be upfront, we're against the project for the fact that it's being developed with low-income families as well as seniors. We're not against the senior development with a few caveats, but we are against low income other than seniors. First of all, low-income housing has a direct impact on property values. When you're within 200 feet of that property, it can be up to 5% devaluation by studies done throughout the United States. Second, higher crime rate is associated with lower income housing. Our neighborhood's already been hit by break-ins, mail theft, and stolen property. We don't want to see that go up. So bottom line, no low-income housing except for the Kapuna. About a year ago, Mr. Kato, who's the project manager or project developer, held a Zoom meeting with us neighbors that are directly impacted. He offered to give us a 30-foot setback. I know the building code is 30-foot setback, but he gave us the word that he would leave that green, that he wouldn't touch the area behind us for 30 feet, to leave the ohias and the natural forest is back there for privacy. And then we talked about a fence. We were talking about a fence on our side. and how it would meet our standards. Our CEC and ours do not allow chain link fence. We're kind of disappointed on what they did at the lower Sunrise Ridge, where they put a chain link fence of 4 foot and a service road right next to the properties down there. That's not very good. But after thinking about it, we'd like to see put the fence on their side of that 30-foot barrier. That way we're able to develop our fence line the way we want to, whether it be portocarpus or rock wall or whatever. We asked that if you approve this project, that it be written into the approval that permanent 30-foot buffer stays with the green space that's currently in place, along with the fence on that side. Currently, there's 2 medical doctors, a pharmacist, and 2 dentists that are impacted by this development. You know, they worked hard all their lives to get where they're at. They work hard during the day. They like to come home and have that privacy. Well, clearing that place and having housing right there, especially low income, is nothing to look forward to. Don't take that away from them. And my last and most concerning for the community of Hilo is the traffic. You know, they did the EIS, and I'm sorry to say, but the traffic study was from 10 years ago with a few other things put in there by the Department of Transportation, which didn't take in the fact that COVID and school wasn't going on. You know, at least the county had the foresight to develop Moholy wide enough to make it 4 lanes. With the addition of this development, you're looking at 150 vehicle parking spaces, along with the emergency dispatch center that's currently going in with another 60 vehicles. You got Matsura Peter that's developing up the road here with more traffic is going to come in. If connections goes through, that's more traffic that's going to flow through here. So I don't know if any of you have ever tried to cross Kukuau during rush hour traffic, make a left turn. It's almost impossible during that time. You're playing Russian roulette with traffic. Then they're asking to put another exit onto our entry onto Kukuau, or I mean on Moholy, closer up by us. Given the line of sight on that road and the curvature and elevation, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. Just recently, our neighbors had a vehicle go through the rock wall right there at the corner, and luckily nobody got hurt. So I guess the bottom line on that, one of the solutions is just widen that road to 4 lanes, which will help alleviate this problem. And again, thank you for consideration. I know if it was your backyard, you'd have concerns too. Thank you. Any questions?
Commissioners, are there any questions on this particular one? Okay,
All right,
thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you.
We will go on to item number 3, which is connections. And there, Mr. Jason Turner.
Mr. Chair, this is Christian. If you give me a moment, I need to move Tom into the waiting room, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, Mr. Jason Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commission. I don't want to waste your time here. This is more of a couple of questions than testimony. I hope that's okay. But I left the last meeting both confused and frustrated by some of the comments regarding some of the voting. And I tried to find these answers on my own. I couldn't find them. I reached out to other members of the community. They seem to have similar questions. So I'm hoping, you know, from a place of respect that I can just ask these questions and kind of get some clarification. And really the general question, the overarching question is very similar to, I think his name was Mr. Keller was asking, which is, does the community have a say in what goes into our backyards? Does the community have a say in what gets developed literally from my point of view in my backyard? And, you know, the commission made 2 sets of statements that have rattled around in my brain for the past month. And one set of statements, you know, were very encouraging in the community to come to meetings like this and to maybe educate the commission on what's going on in our backyards, in our neighborhoods. You know, you don't all live where I live. So trying to explain what things are like, trying to explain what's not, you know, in black and white on the page in front of you. And I felt that many of the commissioners were very encouraging of that, you know, saying to the community, you should come to meetings like this and tell us what's going on. Even I think the chairman was recommending we go on to the next step and make sure that we go to that, you know, land board meeting and testify. And yet at the same time, I felt that there were contradictory statements. Several commissioners in their voting said that, you know, and I'm quoting here, that all the boxes had been checked, and kind of led us down this path of, maybe I'm putting phrases in your mouth here, but how could I vote against it if, quote unquote, all the boxes have been checked? And it left me wondering, isn't the neighborhood's thoughts, wishes, one of those boxes? And if not, you know, all due respect, if that's not part of the purview here, then I will understand that. But if the commission's saying that was a box to be checked and they thought it was checked, I respectfully disagree. I think everything that you've seen from the community was the opposite. So I guess I'd like to ask, was that a box that was supposed to be checked or could have been checked, or was that just not part of this procedure at this stage in the process? Sorry, it was a genuine question. I didn't know if you had time to answer.
I think that would be a good question to have answered. And I would like to refer to our attorney for that guidance.
Good morning. Sorry, I couldn't get my unmute. Yes, I don't know that I would characterize it as a box to be checked, but the testimony of the public and the community and the neighboring community are all part of consideration that the commission is using to make their decision. So they, as the, you know, I guess for lack of a better term, the judge, they can give weight to each testimony and each fact brought by every community member. And then they can weigh that against all the other facts brought by, you know, the applicant and the intervener. So, so yeah, just to sum up, I wouldn't characterize it a box to be checked, but it is taken into consideration. Yes.
Thank you. And if I could, sorry, I don't want to waste anybody's time.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was reflecting the language that the commission was using by boxes to be checked. Several commissioners literally as voting said, you know, and I'm quoting here, all of the boxes have been checked. And so I think what I'm hearing is that maybe the community wasn't a box, quote unquote, to be checked. Is that correct? Or is the commission saying that they do see that box as being checked? I'm sorry to use the language that the attorney just said don't use, but I'm just quoting the commission. And I'm genuinely trying to get clarification. If the commission is saying, sorry, I'm still using the phrasing, that box had been checked, I disagree, and I'd like to know where that came from. If you're saying that's not a box and we're not checking that, we're looking at other criteria, then respectfully, I understand.
I can't speak to what the specific commissioner meant. If you know
it was three, it was several.
Okay, well, if you know which ones did it, then that's great.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. I can't tell you what they meant by saying it. All I can say is that everybody's testimony is taken into consideration when the commission makes a decision. And you would have to ask the specific commissioner what they meant when they stated that statement.
Right, and that's why I'm here. It was mentioned at least 3 times. I don't have the transcripts in front of me. I remember Mr. Au used that phrasing, Mr. Lin used that phrasing. I believe the chairman used that phrasing. I believe others, when they voted for it, acknowledged that phrasing. And Whether there was a meeting that I missed where all the community came out and said we're in favor of this, I respectfully would understand. But the community came out and literally hired lawyers, put signs in their yards. And I left the meeting thinking, what else could we have done to get that box checked or unchecked? And I feel like either procedurally the box wasn't on the sheet, which it sounds like it should have been or could have been. And I'm just questioning whether the commission genuinely saw that as a check box or just put it much lower on the list. It's frustrating, I'm sorry. It's my backyard, literally. And I feel like we were encouraged to come to a meeting like this and say, hey, this is going on in our backyard. And at the same time pivoting and saying, maybe that isn't that important. You know, sorry, I'll stop talking.
No, if you're finished, that's fine. But if you had something to say,
I think my last, I hope that as a member of this commission, when you're imagining these projects and you're imagining somebody without the power to vote, that you're imagining these projects in your own backyards. That each of you, when you voted yes, functionally are saying, yes, I would vote for that project in my backyard against my tree line. And if you're not, respectfully, I don't know that you're really considering the neighborhood's position on this. And I'd just like to close by saying, as an educator, I just wish they'd find a location where the community embraced the project, because this is not that at all. I'm sorry, respectfully.
I would say, Mr. Turner, from my standpoint in regards to your checked boxes, I never looked at anything as checked boxes, but I looked at what the planning director passed forward to us with recommendations and all the things that the school or the applicant, whether it's a school or whatever, that the applicant presented to the planning director, they met all those standards, and you could, I guess, call them checked boxes. But you are right. The planning director does not have the benefit at that time of public testimony. And we do. And I hear what you're saying. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, fellow commissioners, you were kind of expressing along the same line of thought that I was, that they have presented their what they had to present to say, this is what we want to do, yes, no, and the planning director, along with his staff, thought that, yeah, this could happen and there's no reason to deny it. And that's what I would say about it. Please feel free to correct me, fellow commissioners, if I put words in your mouth.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I want to thank Mr. Turner for speaking up in regards to that comment that was made by me last hearing. The term checkbox to me is, what are the requirements and what are the procedures that you have to do to apply for a special permit, right? And my thought process is that the applicant did follow the process, and in terms of checkboxes were done to get to the process. And when we think about the community response or the community's concerns, I mean, we do live here on this island. We do live here on this side. And we do think about what would happen if this was in our backyards, but also what would happen if it wasn't developed, or if, what's the downside scenario of what happens if these type of developments are or aren't done? Does that create opportunities or take away of opportunities from our community? That's my standpoint.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, we will go on to our second testifier on item number 3, Jeff Gomes. I think your mic is muted, Jeff. Still can't hear you.
It's showing that he's connecting to the audio, so he's not presently connected.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Gomes, can you try to speak again, please? Well, still muted, still can't hear him.
He's not showing a mute symbol, so the issue must be with his microphone, I believe.
Unfortunately, still can't hear you, Mr. Gomes.
Can somebody, is there something we can do, an alternative, a telephone?
In the invite, there is a telephone number which would allow Mr. Gomes to call in if he'd like to do that. Otherwise, maybe suggest logging out and then logging back in to see if that fixes the problem. Outside of
Okay.
that, I'm not sure what else can be done.
Can Mr. Gomes hear us? I think he can, right? Why don't we take a short recess to allow Mr. Gomes to log out, can you hear us, Mr. Gomes? Okay, what I'm going to suggest is we will take a 5-minute recess, if you will, and you can log out and log back in again and see if that helps your microphone. Is that okay with you? Okay. If no one has any objections, we will take a 5-minute recess here. We need to be back at 9:36. Okay, see you then. I see your microphone now, Mr. Gomes, but it's got the line through it. Can you hear me? Try unmute and let's do a test. Earlier, you didn't have the little microphone icon. Oh,
How's
there you
that?
go. I hear something.
Is that better?
Oh, there you go. We have liftoff, Houston.
Wow.
Okay, good. Well, you can have a little break. We've got a few more minutes before we're done
Thank you.
with the recess.
Jeff, are you on and want to try and test?
Testing.
All
1,
right.
2.
Can hear you
Oh,
loud
no,
and clear.
he's
Okay,
golden.
thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, it's 9:36. Are all the commissioners back? And everybody? Okay. Okay, I believe we're ready to go. Okay, Mr. Gomes, please continue.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me a break and for allowing me to testify. I'm Jeff Gomes. I live in Kaumana. I'm testifying on the connections application to build a school directly on top of Kaumana Caves. I'd like to first address Ted Hong's latest complaint about me, where he mentions the systemic wave of violence emanating from the school that's pouring out into the community. And he tries to spin it like members of the community are climbing over their locked fence and attacking the employee at the school. But it's actually what happened when I talked to the officer and what my wife saw. The fight occurred, the latest fight occurred in front of the school, came all the way down the street, right in front of my driveway. And when I talked to the officer about what happened, he said they were fighting over a chicken. You know, it's, hey, There's hundreds of chickens. You don't have to fight over chickens. Help yourself. Everybody come get a chicken. You know, the lesson there should not be if you see someone walking with a chicken, run out and attack them and get the chicken from them. You know, be kind. You know, there's this violence is unnecessary. And Ted Hong is right. The violence needs to stop. You know, but it's not the community members attacking people on the campus. It's coming out of the campus onto the street. And if you look at all the evidence of violence that has occurred during this process, you know, the one where John Thatcher's son attacks him and he has to call the police to arrest his own son for beating him up. It's unfortunate. You know, we don't know why that happened, but it did. You know, it's in the record. And it's a sad thing, but violence should not be tolerated. And instead of having, you know, this style of fighting, stop. You know, get counseling, hire a counselor. You know, counsel the students and the staff and everybody. You know, talk it out first. Hire a counselor. But oh, wait a minute, the school does have a counselor. It's Kerry Raplogo. He testified in 2012. He's a counselor at the high school. He's from Kau. Is that a family member? Possibly.
Just for the record, all rep logos are related, but I don't know them all.
Okay. And
And
so, you know, the perception.
I can't help it.
Yeah. So, you know, hopefully I'm wrong, but it looks like, you know, a rep logo on the commission voted for a rep logo that works at the school. But thank you. You don't know him. You know, I'll accept that.
I'd be happy to recuse myself.
It'd probably be better, right? Just for the perception, because like Commissioner Howell was saying, asking the kids to pay attention, kids, this is how government works. Just in case they're watching.
I will defer that again to our commission attorney. And if she thinks there is a conflict here, I will be happy to recuse myself.
Okay.
So,
and I'd like to address the joke at the end of the last hearing where it was said that, you know, who expects kids to drink 60 gallons of water a day? Because where I went to school, we had a building with these fixtures, you know, a toilet and a urinal. It's for us as kids, we could use it. And there was a handle on it, you flush it and water would come out. Water was used to wash the sewage. And then next to that was a sink. You could wash your hands. You could use the sink as long as you wanted, as much water as you want. You could wash your hair, wash your face, wash your hands. And it was actually encouraged, you know, wash your hands. That's what they always taught us, wash your hands. And then we had another building, and this is in Kau, in the middle of nowhere, right? We had a building that was called a cafeteria where they cooked food, and guess what they used? Water to help cook the food. And when they were done cooking, after they got done serving, they used, guess what? Water to clean up, to wipe the tables, mop the floor, and water again to wash all the dishes, you know? And so a group of experts got together and decided we're going to break that down, and we need 60 gallons of water per day per student for a student to safely navigate through the day. Using water, not just drinking 60 gallons of water a day, but throughout the day. Washing, cleaning, and this is not a school. When I went to school in Kau, we had ag, you know, and but when they did this determination, I don't think they took into consideration ag schools. That now you need more water to water the animals, wash the area. Where's all this water supposed to come from, right? And it's not just students drinking 60 gallons of water a day. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you very much.
thank you, Mr. Gomes. And so, fellow commissioners, do you have any questions for the testifiers? Okay. So before we go on, I would like to ask our attorney, Ms. Kekai, if she would care to comment on Mr. Gomes' the possibility that I have a conflict of interest here because there's a Gary Replogle who works for Connections.
Thank you, Chair.
May I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
I have met Gary because a classmate of mine met him at her work. And when she saw the last name, we got together one weekend because we had the last name and we talked about stuff. But other than that, we have just lived our separate lives.
Is
Okay,
Gary,
that's all.
is Gary your brother?
No,
Is Gary a dependent child of yours?
no.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the code of ethics is clear when it defines conflicts of interest. It defines it as an immediate family member, which includes, you know, spouse, brother, sister, and dependent children, and thus. So if Gary is not one of those people to you, then I would say there's no conflict.
Okay, and to my recollection, he grew up in Chicago. And I met him once and
Commissioner,
I thought he was a nice
Chair
person,
Replogle?
if that counts. Yes.
Chair Replogle, can you be impartial? Well, I should ask, were you impartial when you made your initial decision to vote for this application?
Yes.
Okay.
When I made my
We can-
initial, I never heard of Gary until Mr. Gomes mentioned it.
And then you remembered?
Well, yeah, I did meet him about, I'm gonna say 9 years ago,
Okay,
but
that's good. I think that's enough. We can move on now. Thank you.
okay. And thank you, Mr. Gomes, for bringing that to light. I think it's important that we are all above board on this. Okay. Being that there's no questions, I'd like to end public testimony and I would like a motion from a commissioner.
I so move to end public testimony.
Okay,
I second.
it's been moved by Commissioner Clarkson, seconded by Commissioner Galimba that we end public testimony. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. So we're going on to new business now. And item number 1, initiator, planning director. Chake Ox LLC and 159 Kala Nikoa SP LLC, Res 97-00004, PL-PDI-2021-000001. The planning director has initiated a repeal of change of zone ordinance number 97-106 and amending section 25-8-33, City of Hilo Zone Map, Chapter 25, Article 8 of the County of the Hawaii County Code 1983, 2016 edition as amended by reverting the current zoning of the subject properties from industrial commercial mixed 20,000 square feet MCX 20 to their original limited industrial 20,000 square feet ML 20 zoning district for 147,736 square feet of land. The rezone area consisting of 5 parcels is located at the southeast corner of Kalanikoa and Kuava Streets, approximately 130 feet west of Kanoelehua Avenue at Waikea, South Hilo, Hawaii, TMKs 322-032-023 and 2-2-032-101 through 104. Staff presentation will be made by Christian K., our planner. Take it away, Christian.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you again, and good morning to the other members of the commission. We asked our resident French expert here how to pronounce that, and it's Chaquot. So
Chapeau.
that's right. If you give me a moment, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Just one moment, please. Can everybody see that? All right, perfect. Thank you. As the chair stated, this is a planning director initiated repeal of change of zone ordinance number 97-106. The subject parcels, 5 in total, are located in the South Hilo district of Hawaii Island, more specifically in the Waikea area. For reference, we've got Kanalehua Avenue running generally north-south through the slide, and the parcels again are at the corner of Kuava and Kalanikoa streets. The planning director's action is such. The planning director is initiating a request to repeal ordinance 97-106 in response to a written request submitted by representatives of Chaquot LLC, who purchased 4 of the 5 parcels in January 2021. The repeal would revert the zoning of the 5 parcels totaling 147,736 square feet of land to their original limited industrial 20,000 square foot zoning designation from their current industrial commercial mixed use 20,000 square foot zoning designation. Following the purchase of the 4 parcels in 2021, Chaquot, who are the landowners, inquired with the department about obtaining plan approval for uses on one of the properties. At that time, they were informed that due to the zoning ordinance being stale, for example, out of compliance with timed conditions, securing plan approval would not be permissible. As Chaquot has no intention of developing uses permitted in the MCX zoning district, they asked the planning director to initiate rezoning to its original zoning pursuant to condition N of the ordinance, which gives the director authority to revert the zoning should conditions of compliance not be met. Owners of parcel 104, 159 Kalanikoa SP LLC, have been contacted by both Chaquot and the planning department to determine if they wanted to join the reversion action. To date, we've not received a response. As parcel 104 is improved with a self-storage facility and business center structure permitted and built prior to the subject rezone, and all the current uses in the building that are currently a furniture repair facility and store and an ambulance base yard and accessory office are permitted in either zoning district. The requested reversion would not impact their existing use, so the directors agreed to initiate the repeal of the subject ordinance in its entirety, which will revert the zoning of all 5 parcels. So the zoning, again, of the subject parcels right now is currently MCX 20. There's other zoning in the area, limited industrial 20, which is what they're proposing, or what the director is proposing to revert it back to, in close proximity, and some associated commercial uses or zoning and open uses, which are consistent with county park facilities. Across Kaneohe Avenue is the Hilo International Airport. The subject parcel and all of the surrounding area is designated as urban by the State Land Use Commission. And the general plan land use pattern allocation guide map designation for all of the parcels is industrial, which supports both the current and old zoning, which was being proposed to revert back to. Here's an aerial photo of the subject parcels. Again, we've got Kuava Street running toward the top of this slide, Kalanikoa Street running north-south. And here are the 5 parcels here. This is parcel 104 that has the self-storage facility with the other uses. Parcel 103 is here, and it is the former location of most recently Momai Lounge. The other parcels are vacant of any improvements. Here's some views of the subject properties. Again, this is parcel 104 from Kalanikoa Street, showing the existing self-storage facility. The furniture repair shop is here, and then the base yard for ambulances. In upper right is views from parcels from the other parcels from Kalanikoa Street. Lower left views of the parcels from the intersection of Kuava and Kalanikoa, and then lower right is a view of parcels from Kuava Street. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. I forgot to take that one out. With all that said, the director is recommending that the commission forward a favorable recommendation to the county council to repeal ordinance 97-106. With that, I'd like to turn the time back over to the chair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christian. We will now hear from Ronald Kim, Esquire, agent for the applicant. Please raise your right hand. So I can swear you in. Do you swear to affirm, tell the truth on this matter now before the Windward Planning Commission?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and the town you live in, and you may. Oh, and have you received the background and recommendation from the planning department?
Good morning, Chairperson. Ronald Kim. I live in Hilo, and yes, I have received the background report and recommendation from the planning department. Thank you.
Okay. Do you agree with the planning director's recommendations, including proposed conditions?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. We had very little to add actually to what the planning department already did. The planning department did a really good job of explaining the background and situation, and what the plan is for the property, what the difference is between the 2 zoning designations, where it's really sort of a distinction without a difference as far as Shakwo and their neighbor goes, because both of their uses would be allowed under either limited industrial or the mixed commercial industrial use. So it really does seem like a logical step, and it does put us in compliance with the law to allow Shakwo to go forward with getting plan approval. If we revert the zoning back to the initial limited industrial. And we're happy to respond to any questions you might have about the property or Shakwo.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Commissioners, do you have any question for the staff or the applicant? Mr. Clarkson.
Yes, I have a question for the staff. The difference in zoning between the 2, as far as I mean, there are literally dozens of uses approved for each zoning designation, and I didn't go through them one by one, but I wanted to ask the planning department staff whether there was, in their view, a preferred designation for this location, including the existing designation. I mean, is there anything wrong with the way it's designated now? And then my follow-up to that would be, if the MCX is 20 is okay, why not just drop the conditions that are preventing the landowner from making use of the property? I would think either course would be okay, and it might be easier just to modify the zoning ordinance to drop the time limits on the conditions and just leave it the way it is. Any response?
Sure. So I can speak to the first question and then maybe defer the second question to the director. When we did our research on the original rezone, there was no specific project that was associated with the rezone. They mentioned that they wanted to put a mix of light industrial and commercial uses that may support the surrounding commercial and aviation related businesses associated with the airport. So they're unlike today, where generally there's a proposed project tied to a zoning request. That wasn't the case back then. So with their vision back then, the MCX would be the only way to get those types of uses that they were looking to utilize. So I guess long story short, there's no reason for it to be MCX at this point. There's surrounding zoning that's ML, and again the uses are largely similar, so we didn't see an issue with reverting it back. And so that staff's opinion and the director agreed with it that either zoning would be appropriate in that area given the industrial LUPAG designation and all the other factors.
I'll jump in there for part of the other side of it. This is the situation that we run into frequently with the way that you have time conditions on ordinances, right? So obviously it goes stale, and in cases we've seen them try to get time extensions, and in other cases we've seen it repealed back to its original zoning. And this request, with it going back to its original zoning, it was consistent with the entire area. It seemed to make sense doing that. It was kind of the logical approach, as it wasn't needed the additional uses in there. So we fully support it and think it makes sense. We have some other ones coming up on the other side that are a bit more challenging, but this is the case we get into when we have this kind of limbo status and somebody can't really do anything with their property because they went through that process. So I think the request to repeal was fair, reasonable. So it seems to be the most logical route to go.
Well, I'd just like you to respond to my point that the only reason for the request was that they couldn't use their property for any of the uses that were permitted because of the expired time limits.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. They couldn't do anything on the property until the ordinance was brought current, because the zoning was MCX 20 and they were out of compliance, unbeknownst to them, based on representations from the applicant's representative at the time they purchased the property. So yeah, I mean, the process at that point would have to be an amendment in order to bring the ordinance current, which would be a time extension for those timed conditions that had yet to be complied with, or to come in and request the reversion. So those were essentially the two options at that point to allow for something to happen on the properties.
So there were two options, and I'm just still trying to figure out why the one option was preferred over the other from the planning department's point of view.
Sorry, go ahead.
Since they both seem to need an ordinance amendment, one is a reversion, one is dropping of the time conditions. Why, and I bring this up because this issue of the unworkability of time conditions has come up over and over again while I've been on the commission. And my preference is that these rezones ordinances be enacted without any of these time conditions. Basically, if it makes sense to rezone, it makes sense to rezone forever or until there's a change in the neighborhood. So I'm just curious why the planning department said, yeah, you can't do anything because of these expired time conditions. Why don't you ask to revert to a previous zoning rather than why don't you ask to have the time conditions dropped?
I think the process was that we were responding to the applicant's request. I personally hadn't thought of just dropping those conditions. So that's where we're at. It wasn't at the request of the department to go ahead and do this initiation. We're just responding to Chapeau's request.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you. I thought that it was a suggestion from an initiation from the department to take the course you took. I'm sorry.
No worries. Mr. Kim has his hand up.
Mr. Kim?
Thank you. Just as a further on the conditions, the ordinance was enacted in 1997. So the conditions, were imposed over 20 years ago. So that was another thing we were thinking too, is that the situation on the ground today is probably not going to be the same as it was in 1997. So we thought it'd be cleaner to go back and just revert the zoning.
Thank you. Any other questions? So I'll have,
Right, I'd like to make a motion.
okay,
I move that a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the county council on the repeal of change of zone ordinance number 97-106 based on the planning director's recommendations, which shall be adopted.
I second.
it's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Galimba and Commissioner Aguinaldo. Would staff do the roll call vote? Please.
Sure. Is there any discussion before that happens?
Oh, any discussion? Thank you about doing it this way. No discussion. Mr. K.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Let me start with Commissioner Galimba,
Aye.
Commissioner Aguinaldo,
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Rafferty,
Aye.
and Chair Replogle.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. K. We will move on to item number 2 now. The applicant is Hawaii Island Community Development Corporation, HICDC, SLU 20-00054. Application for a state land use boundary amendment from agricultural to urban for approximately 9.09 acres of land. The property is located at 1450 Mohouli Street, directly west Mauka of the Mohouli Senior Housing Project and the Hawaii County Fire Department Administration Support Complex, approximately 1,600 feet west of Mohouli Street and Komohana Street intersection, Waikea, South Hilo, Hawaii, TMK 2-4-001-168. The staff presentation will be done by Tracy Lee Camaro, and she is one of our planners. Take it away, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Chair. Let me get my screen up for you. Can you all see my screen? You can just do a thumbs up. Okay. The applicant is the Hawaii Island Community Development Corporation, otherwise known as HICDC. This is a state land use boundary amendment for their existing parcel. This is the location map. The subject parcel is highlighted in red. The 9.09 acre subject property is located to the west from the Komohana Street and Moho'oli Street intersection in the Waiakea area of South Hilo. You have the Komohana Street running from the north to the south direction on your screen, and the Puainako Street moves further south, which allows you to go onto the Saddle Road. The applicant is currently requesting a state land use district boundary amendment to develop 90 units of affordable housing, which aims to provide affordable housing and related services on a parcel in South Hilo, which was made available by the Governor's Executive Order number 4531. The subject property, this is the Hawaii County zoning map shown on your screen. The subject property is outlined in red, and the county zoning for the subject parcel is agricultural with a minimum lot size of 1 acre, also known as A1A, which is shown on your screen and indicated with the green color. The Sunrise Estate subdivision is immediately north and west of the subject property on lands also zoned agriculture with a minimum lot size of 1 acre. Further to the east, you have the Moho'oli Heights Senior Neighborhood Project, which is located on the subject property and zoned multiple family residential with the required land area of 4,000 square feet for each dwelling unit, shown in the dark brown, and multiple family residential with the required land area of 3,000 square feet for each dwelling unit, shown further east in the lighter brown shades. The adjacent single family residential district includes the Sunrise Ridge subdivision to the northeast, which is zoned single family residential with a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, shown in the yellow, as well as properties to the east across Komohana Street and along Moho'oli Street are zoned RS10 and consist of single family dwellings. Undeveloped lands further north were rezoned to the project district as indicated by the lavender color on your screen and is also known as the Wailani Project District. The state land use boundary map. This is the state land use boundary map. The subject property is outlined in red for you. The state land use designation is currently agricultural, which is shown in the green color, which includes some of the surrounding areas as well. The pink on your screen indicates the state land use urban designation. This is the general plan land use pattern allocation guide map. The subject property is outlined in white on this map and is located within the orange area that represents the medium density urban. This is where the planning department envisions the land use pattern for medium density urban, which are areas of village and neighborhood commercial and single family and multiple family residential and related functions. Surrounding loop bag areas include the rural, shown in the goldenrod, and university, shown in the blue. This is an aerial photograph of the subject property. This photo was taken fairly recently, and as you can see, the earlier phases of the affordable housing, Moho'oli Senior Housing Project is located further to the east that HICDC has completed. The current property is currently covered by much vegetation. You also have in between this property and the Moho'oli Senior Housing Project, you have the subject property, which is also adjacent, is the County Fire Administration Complex, which just started construction, if I'm not mistaken, last week. This is the applicant site plan that was submitted to the planning department with their state land use boundary amendment application, showing the proposed pocket neighborhood concept that the applicant is proposing, as well as the access to the subject property coming from Kupuna Place via an easement over the adjacent TMK 241176. Properties to the immediate north and abutting the subject property are the Sunrise Estate properties. The applicant is requesting the state land use boundary district amendment to develop 90 units of affordable housing, which aims to provide the affordable housing and related services on the parcel in South Hilo. This is the applicant's site plan that was submitted with the applicant's environmental assessment. Please note that this site plan is currently conceptual, granted that the applicant can get the appropriate funding and approval of their 201H application, which is currently in process with the Office of Housing. Access to the subject property is proposed from Kupuna Place again by way of easement over the adjacent parcel, which you can see is the emergency call center. The TIAR that was completed by the applicant recommended the implementation of a right-in, right-out driveway on Moho'uli Street and restriping of part of the wide paved shoulder on the westbound Moho'uli Street, as well as a right turn lane only. At this time, the applicant is proposing full movement access on Kupuna Place, as well as the right-in, right-out access on Moho'uli Street to accommodate future traffic generated by the Hale'olao Moho'uli development. On your screen, you have a photo of the Kupuna Place and Moho'uli Street intersection facing west on Moho'uli Street. The subject property is located further west and not shown on this photo. However, this photo is important as this intersection will contain the only full movement access into the subject property. Kupuna Place is also the current access point for the Moho'uli Senior Housing Project and the County of Hawaii Fire Administration Support Complex. On your screen, you have a photo that shows the view of the subject property from Moho'uli Street facing east. As you can see, there's a curvature in the Moho'uli Street that we wanted to just depict to the commissioners so they have a full view of where the proposed project is going to be, as well as the current street conditions. At this time, the planning director is recommending a favorable recommendation for the state land use boundary amendment to the county council. That concludes my presentation, and I can turn the floor back to the chair. Thank you. Chair, we can't hear you. I think you have to unmute.
You're on mute.
Chair, you're still muted.
Thank you. We have two people to speak for the applicant, and that's Keith Cato and Jeremy McCumber. Have you received the background and the recommendation from the planning department? Are they here? Okay.
Excuse me, Chair, Rep. Logal, are we given an opportunity to ask questions of staff before the presentation by the applicant?
Yes, I'll give you that opportunity. I thought we'd do them all at once, but
okay, never mind.
Excuse me, Mr. Cato and Mr. McCumber. We're going to allow the commissioners to ask question of staff first. So, questions for staff?
Yes, Ms. Camaro, can you put up the boundary adjustment map again for us, please? I have a question about what a boundary adjustment means.
So sorry, let me just get that up for you. I'm so sorry. So you wanted to see the state land use boundary map, correct? The one that shows
Correct.
the green and the things? Okay.
And my question is the area enclosed in red the boundary adjustment, or is the boundary going to be moved from its existing location to include both the emergency call center and the property in question? In other words, is the red area going to move all the way across Moho'uli Street and include the property that's now zoned ag between the application property that we're talking about today and the existing affordable housing projects?
No, at this time, the current request, and I'll get my highlighter for you, it's only going to be the area that's contained in the area that's red. The applicant only has the authority to apply right now at this moment for the area in the red. This portion that has the emergency call center, they had come in for a state special permit, and they didn't come in to do any rezone at the moment for that property. And then the applicant, HICDC, had also come in 2017 and 2018 to do a state land use boundary amendment for this whole area, which you can see is pink, further to the east on Moho'uli Street.
Okay, I understand now, but I just assumed a boundary adjustment or moving a boundary was to actually move a boundary, not to create a separate parcel with a designation like that.
Maybe I'll jump in for a quick minute. You know, the boundary amendment, you think about it from kind of a logical term of the boundary this way. It's not really so much a boundary as a meets and bounds. It's the state land use amendment to the state land use, which you're either going to have, you know, conservation, agriculture, rural, or urban. So it's amending that boundary, which is the TMK of that parcel, to a different state land use. So it's not expanding it or contracting it. It's actually changing the underlying state land use, which the terminology is state land use boundary amendment.
Okay, so boundary amendments are not really just moving a boundary, they're TNK by TNK adjustments or changes.
That's right, Commissioner. It's almost a same thing as a rezone in essence, where you're not changing the meets and bounds, you're changing the zoning. In this case, it's a state land use boundary. So it just encompasses the parcel. I hope that didn't complicate it further.
So Director Kern, it's just a very confusing terminology that potentially may be updated in the future, defining what boundary means.
The challenge is that's used on the state level, you know, from the State Land Use Commission all the way across the board. So it may change, but yeah, sorry for the confusion around that, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a layperson at this, and when I've seen these state land use boundary maps before, I think almost every time I've seen one, everything was contiguous. There weren't any spot boundary changes, but you're saying that that's actually the way boundaries are adjusted, is by spot changes.
It is, unless it was done like at a legislature basis. That gets into a much deeper conversation on how that would be done. But yeah, it'd be on a parcel by parcel basis.
Okay, so we have no ability to just move the boundary across properties that haven't asked for the boundary to be moved.
That's correct. We would not have that ability.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Mr. Rapafi?
Hey, Tracy, do we have any? Do you have a PowerPoint or the presentation map that has all the traffic, the entries and exit, the egress and egress to all the including the call center, the new proposed project and the one across the street? I just want to see how all the left turns are going to be all integrated, because they're all kind of in close proximity.
Tracy, do you have like an overall aerial photo? That might be the best thing to show.
Yeah, sorry, I was just about to pull that up. Let me pull it up because I just have it on my screen. So this is I'm going to share with you guys the same aerial photo that I showed earlier, just because this is the best one to show the existing properties that are currently further east on Moho'uli Street, which include the Hawaii Island Community Development Senior Housing Project. And I apologize, I know this doesn't have like an overlay of the access points, but so this is Kupuna Street. So Kupuna Street is going to be the full movement access point into this specific subject property, as well as the emergency call center property. And it is currently being used for the Hawaii Island Community Development Moho'uli Senior Housing Project as well. Along this TMK there's an easement that's going to provide access rights to HICDC to access Kupuna Place for the full movement access. And further along Moho'uli Street, along approximately this portion of the property, you're going to have a right in and right out only access point into the subject property.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was the one that I was curious about, is the right in and right out. I was not sure if there would be a left turn in that area as well. Thank you, Tracy.
Are there any further questions for staff? Thank you, commissioners. So again, Mr.
Chair.
Keith Pato. Oh, what? Yes.
Mr. Clarkson has a.
I just
Oh,
have one
I'm
more
sorry.
question.
Please.
This is state land, public land. I just wanted to ask our legal counsel and perhaps the staff whether there are any public trust implications in our decision today.
I think as this is just a boundary change and you're not actually approving a project, I would say no, but I'll go check on that. If you just give me 5 minutes. You guys can move on with further questions and I'll come back. You can let the applicant speak. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The third time's the charm, Mr. Kato. And Mr. McCumber, would you please, have you received the background and recommendations from the planning department?
Yes.
Do you agree with the planning director's recommendation, including the proposed conditions?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead with your presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Yeah, we've been working on this project for a while, and we believe that it's a very interesting project in that it is really a different kind of project form. If Tracy, if you could put up the detailed site plan, I think that would help to explain what we're trying to do here.
Yes, let me get that up for you.
Sure. So what we're proposing to do is use this development concept called the pocket neighborhoods. The idea is to take clusters of small structures, either single family, duplex, maybe triplex structures, and group them around the central green areas. You can see that they're kind of arranged in groups of maybe 12 homes, maybe 14. And the idea is to create kind of a community, where you get to know your neighbors, you see your neighbors walk into their units, you get a chance to interact. And I think it tries to create a congenial neighborhood. Well, when we're starting looking at this project, we're trying to determine, do we do it as a senior project or a family project or a mix? So when we did the market study, what the market study showed was that for the Hilo area, which is basically the city of Hilo, there's a need for about 6,000 low-income units or affordable units, let's put it that way. And out of the 6,000 units, the site, won't be able to attract all of them. And, so it kind of came down to maybe something in the range of 700 units would be, possible. Or there were 700 households who may be interested in being on this site. And that mix was really like about 100 to 600 in terms of seniors to families. In other words, there's a much bigger need for family units than there are for senior units. And part of that, I think, is because we developed 182 senior units just down the street. So, that sort of informed us as to what we're proposing, what we should be doing. And so we ended up, with basically a 1/3 senior, 2/3 family. That's basically the mix that we're proposing. As part of this, we started out with, with the intention, and we, sticking with it, this intention of having a 30-foot setback along the Sunrise Estates side. Now, RM4 zoning, I believe, calls for a 15-foot front yard, rear yard setback, and 8-foot setback on the side for a one-story structure. But in light of the fact that Sunrise Estates has a 30-foot setback, by code, we decided we're going to, do the same on our side. The community requested, that we do a fence along there. They're concerned about security. And, typically we do put fences around our projects, just for, if nothing else, the security of our tenants. So we're proposing to do that. And, we plan to utilize this 30-foot setback area, this landscape buffer area, as a area where we have walking paths, recreation areas. If we can, put a dog park in there. Basically so that residents can have, use of the property and have a variety of recreational outlets. We did look at the traffic. We had a traffic study done in November of last year. And it was an odd time because of the COVID situation, but they took some historic traffic counts. And I think the key thing in terms of traffic impact is what traffic is being generated by the project. So, the calculations of the traffic engineers is that in the morning peak, which I believe is something like 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, there'll be 38 cars or vehicles leaving our site, being generated by our site. And of those, they expect 7 to be turning Mauka. The overwhelming, traffic flow is come out from Kupuna Place and flow Makai. In the afternoon, it's a little lower count. It's like 24 vehicles will be coming out of the project, and their projection is only 2 will be turning Mauka. So, we don't believe that there will be a significant traffic impact on Kukuau Street. And the traffic study did show that, all levels of all intersections will be at acceptable levels of service. One of the things with this traffic, is when we were developing the lower projects, Moholy senior projects, as well as the adult day center, we felt that there may be a need at some point to have a traffic signal put on Kupuna Place. We talked to the traffic engineer about that, the chief engineer, and then Ron Thiel, who was the head of the traffic division at that time. And we just asked him, well, what would it take? And he said, well, it would cost them about $500,000 to buy the equipment. And the county at that time was able to install the equipment themselves, if it came to that. So we provided $500,000, which Public Works should still have in their coffers today. We believe that's a significant contribution to dealing with this issue. Now, we we kind of campaigned to get the traffic signal installed earlier. Unfortunately, it didn't meet what they call the warrants for traffic signal installation at that time. Maybe in the future it will, but we agree that something needs to be done at that intersection, and we just like to point out that we have made a contribution toward that end. So we believe that this will be a project that is much needed for the community, that it'll be an attractive project, and we're doing what we can to minimize the impact while also creating a situation that meets the broader needs of the community. Commissioners have any questions, we'll be glad to entertain them.
Thank you, Mr. Kato. Mr. McCumber, do you have something to add?
Oh, Mr. McCumber, we can't hear you.
He
Sorry
looks
about that.
frozen.
How's that?
Oh,
Can you hear me? Okay. I would just add to Keith's conversation about the traffic aspect that the attempts to approaching signalizing Kupuna Place, Keith had that conversation early on in the Moho'oli Senior Development, closer to the completion of phase 1, and also close to when we were completing both the Adult Day Center and the last phase there. So there have been multiple attempts by our organization to recognize the potential concerns. Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Lin.
Mr. Kato or Mr. McCumber, could you maybe explain the term affordable housing and maybe provide the area median income for this project? Because I think the term affordable housing has a negative connotation when it comes to development. So if you could explain how the area income compares to maybe some of the other projects out there, or maybe what type of people income would be going into these projects?
Yeah, let me look it up so I can give you the exact dollar figures that we're talking about. Okay, hang on. Yeah. So the basic, financing that we would be using is low-income housing tax credits. Now, we've used this program before in all of our other projects, and it is oriented towards households with income at 60% of the area median income and below. Let's see, can we get up? Sorry, my link to HHFBC is not being cooperative here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's see, County of Hawaii area median income is 78,800. 60% of the area median income, this is for a family of 4, would be 51,360. So that's really the range that you're looking at. I think that 51,000 is really catches a big segment of our population in terms of what the household incomes are.
Right, because I mean, 51,000, you could be talking about elementary school teacher, a high school teacher, maybe a county worker, right? I think that falls into that category. So I think when we talk about low income and affordable, right, I just think that there's a lot of misunderstanding on what.
Excuse me, Mr. Lin. Somebody has their mic on and they're talking story.
Mr. Chair, I believe
Thank
it's the
you.
background of Mr. Lin.
Yeah, that might be in my background.
Oh,
I apologize. Yeah. I have some
Okay,
visitors in
carry
my
on,
office.
Mr. Lin.
Yeah, so I just think there's some misconceptions on what low income. I think that's a term that's used a lot, but it may not necessarily mean low income.
Yeah, I can help kind of paint the picture a little bit. I think Mr. Lin definitely clarified it a bit in terms of the demographic. We're talking about entry-level county workers, starting professions of like teachers, law enforcement, people that work in the food service industry, hospitality industry. So yeah, we're not, though we could take in sort of the lower income spectrum because they would qualify. That's the demographic that we're talking about in terms of the families, which is sort of entry starting level occupations with, 1 to 2 children.
Yeah, perhaps I can give you a little bit more specifics. This will be our first family project, so we don't really have a lot of data on who's in there. But we've been doing this self-help housing project for several years, and that one the incomes can go higher. It's up to 80% of the median income. But 40% of the people in those projects are at 50% of the median income. And the kind of people we end up, recruiting really are cafeteria workers, policemen. Basic working people.
So I have a question, Mr. Replogle.
Mr. Clarkson, please.
Is it foreseen that these families will be renting, or will these be long-term leases equivalent to purchases? Or will they be purchases with conditions for prohibiting resale for a number of years? What will be the tenure for these residences?
These are going to be, this program is scheduled to be all rentals.
Okay,
I'm sorry, all what?
All rentals.
Okay.
I just like to ask whether, this is just, it's just a thought that occurred to me that projects like this, which I think are perfectly fine, but is there any danger that they're going to facilitate the conversion of existing rental properties into short-term vacation rentals, or in other words, is the reason that people need this housing the fact that they can't find rentals, and what is the reason they can't find rentals elsewhere? I'm just curious what the dynamics of the market are.
Well, typically, I think that you find studies that show that those families, households in the lower incomes are actually paying a high percentage of their income for rent. And I think, the target really is 30% of your income. And for a lot of low income families, they're paying like 50% of their income for rent. And so that, I would imagine that people are going to want to move into our project because it's a nice project, but it's also more affordable for them. That's what we find with a lot of our seniors. In terms of any other kind of tenure, I'm going to point out that this is state property, and the state at this point, is not letting the state property be converted to fee. So if we're going to use it at all for residential, we have to use it as a rental.
Thank you.
And
Thank
if
you.
I may add to Commissioner Clarkson's question, as far as the short-term vacation rentals, for the non-conforming use certificates on the east side, which is basically all Hamakua through Hilo through Ka'u, there's around 400 of those in total. If you look at the housing numbers that are needed projected over the next 5 years, they're in the close to 13,000 for affordable housing. So it's huge. I think what we've seen is a lack of units, a lack of starts, right? A lack of housing really being built at any type of level, but the demand's still there. So I think they're really separated from each other on there's obviously a small component with anything related to the use of a home. So the short-term vacation rentals, while it affects the market, I believe based on the current law that's in place and the fact that we're not doing more of those, it's a very, very small percentage. And generally those are located in a more different type of location, closer to the coast, closer to different, more vacation type uses versus kind of that urban core where we can get families living. And I also want to underscore Commissioner Lynn's point of, affordable homes, affordable rentals, they affect people that are really close, that we know that are serving us, that are close friends. It's not what we often think of as this kind of outside, I see driving by and you got a bunch of mess in your carport. These are people that serve us, that work with us, that are friends, that are families, that we work with. It's a big deal. So I hope that helps a little bit, Commissioner Clarkson, as far as that nexus of those areas.
No, it does. I just, excuse me for my intense interest in this. I was involved in self-help housing projects in Keaukaha and Panaeva back in the late 80s, Miloli'i. And recently, and Keaukaha, for example, at that time was strictly local family housing, mostly rental housing. And that area, I've been told, is now very high percentage short-term vacation rental, which is forcing the rental market higher and higher and forcing low-income families out of houses that they might easily have rented. So anyway, I won't go on and on. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clarkson. Is there any other questions? Or are there any other? Okay.
Sure. Mr. Aguinaldo has a question.
Oh, I can't see him. Mr. Aguinaldo?
Unmute.
Mr. Aguinaldo, ¿dónde estás? Unmute. There he is.
Good morning. All right. So I totally agree with what Dennis indicated. And as far as that there is a need, but there's, the conception of what's affordable, low income, especially when you look at, I did look at the surrounding areas that is in you guys' backyard. You're averaging over $500,000 to almost $2 million. And I do see their concerns of what is my property value, and everybody's entitled to their concern, like, hey, you can get this project in my backyard. Now, with that there, respectfully, we got to make pono with your neighbors, especially with that kind of hardworking people invest that kind of money in their property. And yes, it is a need for the community, what I see. And when you guys are talking about rental, are we talking like apartments? Are we talking like something similar down the old, I think down Moho'uli, near the police station? Are we talking that kind of housing? Now, what kind of enforcement is HICDC gonna do? Sometimes get out of hand. You guys investing a lot of money with this. We cannot just let tenants just abuse the place. As far as you guys buffer 30 feet, that is great. Now, within that buffer, what are you guys gonna mitigate with possibly noise or whatnot. And there's a lot of people what was discussed with Dennis is I do have friends as well, in that kind of medium. Are we gonna help that kind of people, or like school teachers, for example? We get a hard time finding school teachers, finding nurses to even come to our island. Are we gonna be able to cater to that? Designate a section for that kind of working force, or is just gonna be just first come first serve? That is my question for Keith and Jeremy. And I know you guys know that we're shortage with nurses as well. In our hospital.
Sorry, Commissioner Aguinaldo, point of order. If you could just ask one question at a time, let the applicant answer, and then ask another question, that would be helpful.
Okay. So as far as that this goes for Keith and Jeremy. Like what Dennis indicated, as far as people that serve in the community, is there going to be like a section for those kind of income people?
Well, in terms of trying to set aside units for certain classes of people or certain categories of people, one of the things that comes with using the state funding is they require us to have a lottery, and it's basically not exactly first come first serve, but it's like you put if you're on the list at the time that the rent up starts, then we are required to conduct a lottery, and that's the order in which we that's the order in which we process. In terms of monitoring the project, I think if you go into our project, the rental projects, you'll find that they're very neat. Things are quite orderly. We have we're going to be having resident maintenance people there, and so we have pretty firm house rules that they enforce, because people want to once they get in the project, they want to stay in the project, so they really comply with the rules. That's something that we feel is important for the benefit of all the other tenants that we have, much as well as for the neighbors. I'm not sure what else you had in your list of questions there, but if I missed something, let me know.
I think we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cotto and Mr. Aguinaldo. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I just have a quick question for staff. Just
Well, we passed that already.
Well, I'm gonna
Just
go
kidding.
back.
Carry on.
So just, is there gonna be, this is a land use boundary amendment or adjustment. Will there be a later application for rezone? Or is that incorporated in this procedure today?
No, so there won't be a later application for a rezone. The applicant actually currently submitted a 201H application in which they're going to ask relief from the county zoning requirements within that 201H, and that'll happen through the Office of Housing by way of resolution.
So
I'll just add that also goes in front of council. So it's a different way to get to council, basically.
yeah, the 201H is a different path to get a zoning done. It's through a state HRS, the 201H process. And basically in essence, it expedites the zoning and it goes through the Office of Housing. But granted, the state land use has to match up with that. So that's what you folks are seeing here is that state land use boundary amendment to get it so it's urban. And then they go forward with their 201H process that gets approved by council. And within that, they're able to get certain relief from, say, building permits and sometimes, right-of-way widths and things of that nature to make it more affordable. And it has to hit a minimum threshold of at least 51% affordability for that to even be a process. And it's a process that's used quite frequently these days. So that's kind of where you'll see this coming through, and then you'll see the 201H, or what you'd look at as a rezoning coming through the OHCD.
So as a commission, we have absolutely no input on any of these setback. We have no input or concern really with anything other than the boundary amendment, and all of the conditions of the project development are going to be handled by the council without going through us.
That's correct, with the exception of the couple of conditions that are on there with the farming, et cetera, that you've seen. The right to farm next door.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or Yes.
Hey, Chair,
Ms.
I'm
Kigay.
going to answer the question from Commissioner Clarkson from prior about the public trust doctrine. I was incorrect when I first stated that it doesn't apply. It does apply for a state land use boundary amendment. This project, I believe, has done an environmental review and has received a finding of no significant impact. Therefore, the commission could, conclude that the impacts to the land have been considered, but I will leave that to you guys to discuss if you would like to, the public trust doctrine.
Thank you. Mr. Clarkson, anything? Anybody else have questions? No? Okay, I would like to, yes, Mr. Aguinaldo?
I said no.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, may I say something first?
Go ahead.
Briefly, it's not a question, but at $750,000 for a median price home in Hawaii now, most of us could probably qualify for this housing project, and people need help. And what they need a place. Or are we going to send them somewhere else? Say, you can't live in Hilo. There's no room because we don't want you next door. Anyway, that said, would somebody make a motion? Mr. Rapafi.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion. I move that a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the county council on the application for state land use boundary amendment docket number SLU 20-000054 based on the planning director's recommendations, which shall be adopted.
I second.
It's been moved by Mr. Rapafi and seconded by Mr. Aguinaldo. All those in, oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Camaro, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Rapafi?
Tracy, hold on just a second. Chair, could you take up discussion first?
Oh, okay, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? There is none. Ms. Camaro, you may proceed.
Thank you. Commissioner Rapafi?
Aye.
Vice Chair Aguinaldo?
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Galimba?
Aye.
Commissioner Lin?
I think it was an aye.
And Chair,
You're muted.
perfect, thank you. And Chair Replogo?
Aye.
Thank you.
So the motion is, oh,
carries.
go ahead.
Sorry, the motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So right now, I would like to propose that we take a half-hour lunch break before we start the next unfinished business. Last time we didn't eat lunch or do anything till 2:30, so I want to be accommodating in that way.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
objection? Chair, Mr. Kern?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'll be signing off now, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you all very much for your service. Just want to say aloha.
thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna
Mr.
sign off right
Rapoport?
now. I'm gonna sign
Okay.
off right now since the next item is one that I recuse myself from. So thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you in December.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? You all okay with lunch? Okay, good. It's 10:58. Let's say 11:30. We'll see you back here. Thank you.
I gotta eat lunch now. You like eat lunch?
Hi, Ted. Hi, Romeo. I just want to let you guys know that the commission is on a lunch break until 11:30. So I'm going to put a screensaver up here in just a minute that says that they'll be back in order at 11:30.
Okay, thank you, Mahia.
All right, thank you very much.
See you then.
Thanks for
Alrighty.
letting me know we were in the waiting room. I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
All right.
I'm starting to do that so that we have better connectivity for every
Okay.
meeting. Yeah, for every item on the agenda.
And just so you know, I was able to go to YouTube on my phone and I was able to still listen to the
Great.
previous. So that's working well too.
Great. Yeah, there's about I think like a 3 to 5 minute delay on YouTube, but I'm glad that it's still, you were still able to get on there and see the meeting.
Sure was. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Bye.
Maya, do you see that on the screen now?
So,
I do.
Okay, great.
well, question, Maya, should we just keep this connected or log back in later?
I would go ahead and keep connected and then just mute yourself and turn off your video until the meeting
Okay.
starts up again.
And how do you pronounce your name?
Maya,
Maya. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, maybe actually right now we should go talk to Maya about what the decisions were this morning. Yeah. And that way we can keep jump on it while you're.
Christian, you're unmuted.
Mama bird to me? No, it's lentils, so it's already pretty pre-chewed. Sorry, that was too snarky. I didn't mean for it to be super snarky. I didn't mean for it to be that. Okay. Oh, sure.
No, but then I thought about it. I was like, I kind of felt awkward saying it too. Like I was like, oh wait, no, I'm not trying to fly.
No, it's okay if you want to fix my bib.
If I can help you, and I thought he was help.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
That's
Thank you.
really what I wanted to say. To help you, but yeah, it said it felt like I'm gonna feed you. Sorry, total awkward. Thankfully, you make
I've never been accused of that.
Especially for like a whole year now. I'm like, it's how unexpected it is. Although well, actually, I was watching the video.
Oh, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, sure. That's it. Okay. Yeah, he was there. Emily. Oh, geez. I better stop that. Thank you. Bye. I don't see it. I don't see him.
Christian, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I wish I said something more intelligent.
Yeah, no talk stink about me. Is everybody else here?
I believe we're still waiting on Gilbert to come back.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, we contacted Gilbert by phone. Oh, it looks like he's ready, waiting to come in here. Here he comes. All right, you have a full complement of those who are participating from the commission.
Okay. And I'm going to guess the applicants are here. So I'm reconvening our November Planning Commission meeting. And we're taking up our unfinished business at this point. The applicant, Connections New Century Public Charter School, Community-Based Education Support Services, SPP 12-000138. Consideration and adoption of proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order for approvable and favorable recommendation to the State Land Use Commission of Special Permit Number 12-000138 to develop a K-12 charter school campus with dorm facilities, related
Chair, we
uses.
can't hear you if you're, I don't know. It doesn't seem that you're muted, but we just can't hear you.
Malia, I can hear him fine.
I can hear him as well.
I appreciate.
Now you are muted, John.
We are going to continue with unfinished business. Stop me if you can't hear me. Applicant, Connections New Century Public Charter School, Community-Based Education Support Services, CBESS SPP 12-000138. Consideration and adoption of proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order for approval and favorable recommendation to the State Land Use Commission of Special Permit Number 12-000138 to develop a K-12 charter school campus with dorm facilities and related use on approximately 7 acres 70 acres of land situated in the State Land Use Agricultural District. The property is located on both the southwest and northeast sides of Adita Street near its intersection with Kaumana Drive and adjoining the Pacific Plantation subdivision in Kaumana, South Hilo, Hawaii, TMK 2-5-006141. The applicants, Kevin Richardson, Deputy Attorney General, attorney for applicant Connections, New Century Public School, Ted Hong, Esquire, attorney for the applicant, Community-Based Education
Chair,
Support Services.
sorry.
Yes,
Point of order.
please.
You don't have to do introductions. Please have the parties introduce themselves for the record.
Okay, thank you. Parties, would you please introduce yourself for the record?
I'll go first. Good morning, commissioners and chair, Deputy Attorney General Kevin Richardson on behalf of applicant Connections Public Charter School. Also present is Romeo Garcia, Director of Connections Public Charter School.
Aloha kakayaka. This is Romeo Garcia, Connections Charter School Director.
Good morning. My name is Ted Hong. I represent CBEST. With me this morning are Heather McDaniels. Heather, you want to give us a wave? And John Thatcher. John? Thank you.
My name is Michael Matsukawa. I represent the intervener Jeffrey Gomes, who might be on the regular YouTube. He was earlier present to give his oral testimony.
Yes, thank you. And the planning department?
Good afternoon, everybody. Jean Campbell, Deputy Planning Director. I'm sorry, Deputy Corporation Counsel. And with me is Deputy Planning Director, Jeffrey Garrow.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to swear you all in together. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth on this matter now before the Windward Planning Commission?
Yes.
Yes.
I do.
Okay. Applicants, we have received your proposed amendments to the draft findings. Do you have anything further to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, two more things.
Mr. Hong.
Thank you. On behalf of CBEST, I just note that on the draft proposed findings at page 16, paragraph F as in Frank, on the third line, around the on the right hand side, the word C-O-M-E appears. That's a typo. Should be some with a S. Other than that, you have our proposals, and certainly, you know, the first amendment that we submitted is to reflect the current status of the school, and the second regarding the Kauai Springs case. You know, we're certainly not married to that. I think that the board, I appreciate the commission's language, and so we're not pushing that particular issue. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up was I believe that Mr. Thatcher wanted to make a comment as well.
Mr. Thatcher, is this true?
Yes, if I could, thank you.
Please go ahead.
I just want to request that I not be questioned about the personal attacks by Mr. Gomes on my family before I can consult with an attorney.
Of course.
And so I want to thank the commission and certainly Corporation Counsel for putting this very comprehensive proposed findings. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for the applicant? Okay, and the intervener, Mr. Masukawa, do you wish to speak on anything?
Yes, I'll be brief. We found exceptions, and I trust that the commission members read the exceptions as well as the record on appeal. What I think it's important to note is that by state law, when commission members have not heard the original testimony or reviewed the original exhibits back in 2012 and 2014, and I think none of the commissioners in this instance were present then, Section 91-11 gives parties like the intervener the opportunity to direct the commission members to points that they may have overlooked and to provide written exceptions to the commission's proposed findings. And so that's why we prepared exceptions to the proposed findings. What I think we need to understand here is, and I imagine your county attorney will give you advice. The record, as we believe the the commission should be aware of, was not altogether vacated by the Intermediate Court of Appeals. In its decision, it did vacate certain findings as being unsupported by the evidence, but did not vacate other findings, which is what we point out in our exceptions. Those findings that were not specifically vacated by the Intermediate Court of Appeals dealt with 3 decision criteria. And the first one was the effect on surrounding properties. And Mr. John Turner, I believe that was his name, this morning adequately and very clearly explained his understanding on this point. I refer you to the original 2014 findings that were not vacated. That's number 47. That has to do with adverse effect on surrounding properties. And number 47 states, measures proposed by connections regarding the establishment of building setbacks and roadway improvements to Edita Street do not appear to be sufficient to mitigate the overwhelming concerns raised by surrounding property owners. That finding was never vacated and remains binding on everyone, including the commission. The second provision that was not vacated from the 2014 decision is number 22, which is the second sentence that reads in regard to potable water. However, Connections has not produced any evidence to demonstrate that it has or can develop sufficient water for the development. Again, this finding was not vacated. It remains binding on all parties and the commission. The third finding that was not vacated is number 57. The development of a school will change the essential character of the forested land and its undeveloped use. This again is binding on everyone, including the commission. The proposed findings that are before you today don't really address these questions or these unvacated points that remain binding. They seem to overlook them and to meld them into some overall balancing of the interest type of argument, which the ICA criticized the commission for doing the first time. With that, I can answer any questions. I don't want to repeat what's been written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Masakawa.
Mr. Chairman, may I be heard on that?
Heard of who?
This is Ted Hong on behalf of CBS. May I respond to Mr. Matsakawa?
Yes, you may.
All right, thank you.
I believe you may.
Thank you. In terms of what Mr. Matsukawa was saying, this is not a second bite of the apple. This is actually their fourth bite of the apple. This is a reconsideration motion or an attempt to do a end around a reconsideration motion, which is not permissible under the commission rules. I would point out, we had a hearing. You had asked both parties to submit their positions regarding what the scope of the remand instructions were by the Intermediate Court of Appeals. We had a hearing on that in August. And then we had the hearing on the substance, on the merits later on in October. So my concern is, this is not just going back one step. Mr. Matsukawa wants to take these proceedings back 2 steps. There was nothing to prevent him from raising this back in August. There was nothing to prevent him from raising this in October. And yet, after the fact, he now tries to get his fourth bite of the apple. It is impermissible. The commission should ignore it just on the procedural issues or grounds, and then adopt its findings and proposed findings. Thank you.
Mr. Masukawa, please.
I object to what Mr. Hong said. I'm looking at your question that was presented to the parties about the scope of the hearing that we briefed. The question presented was whether the commission should make whether the commission should make a decision on the record as presented or open the record and consider new evidence. That was the only question that was asked. Some said, open up the hearing, take new evidence. Some said, no, just leave the record as it is. So I think Mr. Hong is mischaracterizing what the commission was asked to do. This is not a second or third bite. Section 91-11 of state law says when none of the commission members heard the original evidence, but intend to make a decision, it must make a proposed decision to which we, by statute, state law, have a right to file exceptions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Masukawa. Commissioners, do you have any questions or?
Yes, I do, Chair Rapullo.
Yes, Mr. Lin.
I would like to ask our Planning Commission attorney, Ms. Kikai, to address Mr. Masukawa's comment that we as commissioners need to make exceptions based off of that section of code or law. Is that correct or incorrect?
I will say this on his statement about the findings of fact. In the memorandum from the court, they basically said, even though they didn't vacate all the findings, that the Planning Commission may reconsider any weight it is assigned to this finding and these findings. So I would disagree that I think that you are locked into these findings. If you guys want to add them back in, we can do that. But at that same token, I will say that the court gave clear instruction that you guys can weight them how you want to. So for instance, this one basically refers to finding of fact 49, which was, that there was no evidence that connections had the ability to develop a potable water source. You guys could put that back in if you so chose. I don't think that would change the outcome of your decision. But at the same time, I guess I'll leave it at that. I don't think that you guys are locked into these findings or making the same determination that the original commission did.
Thank you. And I think based on my understanding, and you may correct me if I'm incorrect, but the ICA's decision was to allow the Planning Commission to make a decision on this case, no matter what they said, right? Although they said we vacate this, we don't vacate this, those results is up for us as the commission to interpret, to understand, and use to make our decision. Whether or not we do agree if it was vacated or not, that is up to us. And it does not mean that we have to make exceptions.
I don't know if I would go so far as exceptions, but I will say that when a court vacates a decision and remands it back to a commission, you are basically ordered to follow the court's orders, right? And therefore, you couldn't go back and rely again on a finding of fact that was vacated for being arbitrary or clearly erroneous or anything like that. You couldn't do that. So that's basically the parameters which in the commission has to play. You can't go, and basically directly contradict something that was already stated. Outside of that, the court gives the agency discretion, to make their ruling based on the record. And if you guys had, made the same decision as you made initially, that would be allowable, but you would have to create more findings to line that up. And now in this situation where you guys have changed your decision to an approval, you just have to make sure that you have the requisite findings to, show that your decision is supported by substantial evidence.
Thank you. Mr. Hong?
I have advised boards and commissions before. I've sat on boards and commissions before on the state and county level. The section that Mr. Matsukala is referring to basically says that in the normal course of a board or commission where the people are cycled through because of terms, if somebody comes on midway in a contested case hearing or something else, what the law requires is that commissioner has to go back into the record and read the record. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about making a decision or having that commissioner or board member bound by prior decision. All it says is, look, if you're coming in midway into this game, you just got to make sure you know what happened before you came into the game. That's all that section applies. That is how that section is applied. And I submit that Mr. Matsukala's extension of this argument or this particular section of the law is inappropriate, similar to his extension of the Kauai Springs case. But anyway, that's another issue. Thank you.
Anyone else? Planning department, anything?
Nope, nothing from us. The planning department is satisfied with the draft findings, conclusions, and order as they're drafted. Thank you.
So I have a procedural question. So
yes, please.
If a commissioner has a problem with a particular finding, do we take that up as part of the discussion after a motion, or do we discuss it now?
We should have a motion first before discussion.
Okay. So.
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
I move that the proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, decision and order be approved and adopted.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Galimba and seconded by Dennis Lin that we accept the the proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision and order to be approved as adopted. Any discussion? Mr. Clarkson.
Yes, the main finding, I don't have the number in front of me, relates to the issue of public trust, wherein the finding states that the commission considered the public trust and based on the use of the property felt that the public trust interest was protected. Whereas in fact, the commission did not consider the public trust I want there to be a finding about public trust in the findings, but I feel that it must be either that the commission did not consider public trust because, as Mr. Hong states, it's not relevant to this issue, or that the commission did not discuss public trust because it's relying on the Land Use Commission to do so, but not that we actually did consider it and found that it was protected. So I strongly object. I made a motion at our last meeting to actively consider the public trust, and that motion was defeated, I think 3-2. And so to say now that the commission found that the public trust was protected is completely inaccurate. It's either relevant and we didn't consider it, or it's completely irrelevant and we should just so say in our findings.
So is that something you would have wanted to put as a amendment to the findings of fact and decision, or what are you saying?
Well, I'll ask our counsel. Applicants counsel has claimed that public trust does not apply in this situation. I find that implausible, but if the rest of the commission agrees, then we should adopt the applicant's language for that finding, rather than have a finding that, in fact, the commission did not even discuss. So that would be my suggestion. If I need to make a motion for an amendment, I would do that. I would say that we should adopt the applicant's proposed language that public trust is not relevant to this case because this is not prime agricultural land. And we'll let this be decided by another court on appeal.
Could I say something?
Yes, Ms. Galimba.
Thank you. So I would say that from my understanding of public trust doctrine, that it would be relevant. And I would say that I considered it, even though we didn't have an active discussion or an extended active discussion about it. At the time that we were discussing the motion that Commissioner Clarkson was speaking about, the intervener's attorney declined to argue that point, which did go into my decision. So that there was some discussion around that. So to sum up, I guess I believe that the public trust doctrine was considered, albeit in a brief form. And so I don't think there needs to be that sort of dichotomy that Commissioner Clarkson is suggesting. And if you understand that, I will give you a gold star.
Anybody else, commissioners?
I'm inclined to go with Mr. Clarkson's latter argument that if we are going to either well, to put in the public trust doctrine language in there, based on what my understanding of it, if the area is unsuitable for agriculture, but the school is working towards conserving it and utilizing it for, what is it called here? Sorry, I'm pulling up that, preserving its natural beauty and natural resources. I think, there is an argument there that they are trying to preserve it, but it's just not suitable for the optimal use of that land. So I would be inclined to put in the applicant's language in that section. I agree with that. We didn't discuss it in depth. We just kind of glanced over it at our last discussion.
Any other thing? I would like to say I definitely considered the public trust, and I think considering that the land was graded as poor agricultural, and the school's plan to teach agriculture in greenhouses or hydroponically is promoting agriculture on land unsuitable for agriculture, something that is going to be important in Hawaii's future. And also that the larger portion of the property, their plan is to preserve the forest, have a trail or whatever for educational purposes, teaching the children about what's going on in our native forests, replanting, producing native plants in their greenhouse for that matter. I think the public trust is considered well in this thing here, what they're doing. And I agree, we didn't have a big discussion on it, but I wouldn't let the public trust slide, believe me. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure. We have a motion on the floor, and it sounds like we need to defeat that motion if we want to add what Mr. Clarkson and Mr. Lin are talking about, or we should just have a vote and there you go. Bob's your uncle.
Mr. Chair, the only.
Yes, Mr. Darrow.
Oh, sorry.
Just quickly, we're in discussions at this time. There's been a motion made. You have the proposed findings of fact, conclusions, and law decision. You're reviewing that at this time. There's a finding of fact of 66 that goes into detail on the public trust doctrine. That's something that you can review right now. If you agree with that finding of fact, you can vote to approve as part of the overall final findings of fact, conclusions, and law decisions. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. K?
I was just going to say, procedurally, there's only one motion on the floor right now, and that is to adopt as drafted. Should there be a request to amend that motion, then the commission could consider that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I made that motion, and although I don't think there was a formal second to amend, I made a to amend.
My apologies. So yeah, we would need a second to.
I can second Mr. Clarkson's amendment.
Was that an official amendment, Mr. Clarkson, or were you talking hypothetically?
Oh, no, I made, after some discussion of the original motion to approve, and after hearing Commissioner Galimba's comments, I am moving to adopt the applicant's language to the effect that public trust doctrine does not apply in this case because it's not prime agricultural land. And rather than the finding that was, I don't want to say conjured out of thin air, but certainly I certainly don't remember any discussion of public trust issues that I think would comply with the Kauai Springs directive from the Supreme Court. All the A, B, C, D, E things that we have to do. So if we're not going to do that, then let's just say outright that public trust does not apply. And that's what the applicant's attorney has suggested. And let's go with his language.
And what is that particular finding again, Mr. Clarkson?
I don't have it in, I don't have the number in front of me.
I believe it was number 66.
66. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just point of order.
Yes, please.
So if there are going to be more amendments made, then I don't want to piecemeal this and have an amendment, then another motion of amendment, and then another motion for amendment. I think we have the initial motion on the floor. Commissioner Glimba, you can either withdraw or you can keep your motion, which has already been seconded. And then we can move on. If you would like to do that, then we can move on to another motion. But unless we're going to switch the motion to approval with amendments, and then we can go through those amendments if you guys so choose.
So we should probably vote on this motion on the floor. And if it passes, then it's done. If it doesn't, we could go to motions with amendments.
Or,
Does that make sense?
Or Commissioner Galimba could withdraw her original
motion. I don't wish to pressure her.
Her decision.
I'm not going to withdraw it.
Thank you. Okay. So we have a motion before. Is there any other further discussion? We have a motion before the commission. Move to the proposed finding of fact, conclusions of law, decision and order be approved and adopted. Although, this should probably be a roll call vote, Mr. K.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, there are actually two active motions on the floor that have been moved and seconded. There's the main motion, which was, as you just stated, and then a second motion, which is to amend the findings of fact with the amended finding. So if you adopt as is, then you don't have an opportunity to hear that secondary motion.
Okay, but isn't it supposed to be you have one motion at a time on the floor? And I admit another motion was made and seconded, and maybe I should have stopped it right there, but.
Yeah, I will say this, with the Leeward Planning Commission, we've been advised that, and this happens with the county council as well, when there is a main motion on the floor, a secondary motion can be made to amend that main motion. You handle that secondary motion first, and then you go to the original motion to deal with. And so similar to what you talked about, we could hear the secondary motion to see if we're going to amend the language within the findings of fact and then deal with the original, and that would essentially amend the main motion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clarkson?
Yeah,
One moment, please. You're going to have to state your motion again for the record, but go ahead.
Before I do it again, I would just like some clarity because there seems to be a procedural disagreement between Mr. K and our council as to how this should be done. Council K. Kai has said that the motion to amend has to be,
Mine is more a logistical thing, Chair. I mean, Commissioner Clarkson. I'm saying if you guys are gonna make multiple amendments, I would like them to be all in one motion instead of continually making a motion to amend the original, motion to amend the original. So if there's other amendments that need to be made at this point, like if you're gonna adopt the applicant's suggestion to change the typo, then, you know, put that in here, or anything else. Or if it's just including just number 66 and the commission is satisfied with that, then we can act on the second motion first.
Okay,
I have no interest in making a motion regarding the typo. I only have an interest in the finding of fact 66 and will not be proposing or moving any further amendments.
okay. Why don't you make your official amendment and we'll get a second? Or at least state what you said earlier so we can go on. Mr. Lin already seconded what you said.
Yes,
But I want everybody to know what you said before we go.
I want to amend the original motion that was made by Commissioner Galimba to, which was for approval of the findings of fact, conclusions of law, decision and order, to substitute applicant's proposed language, which I don't want to have to repeat because I don't have it in front of me, but I know the gist of it, for finding of fact 66 related to public trust.
Okay,
That was my motion.
thank you. And Mr. Lin seconded it.
I
And,
stand with my second.
okay, thank you. Again, just to be safe, is there any more discussion on that? Okay. Mr. K, would you do a roll call on that amendment? And then we go to Ms. Galimba's motion, correct?
That's correct. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Commissioner Clarkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lin,
Aye.
Commissioner Aguinaldo,
Aye.
Commissioner, Chair Replogo. Oh, pardon me, Commissioner Galimba,
Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
and Chair Replogo.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries with 5 ayes, 0 noes.
Okay, and now we're going to the motion made by Commissioner Galimba that the proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, decision and order be approved as adopted. Mr. K.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Galimba,
Aye.
Commissioner Lin,
Aye.
Commissioner Aguinaldo,
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson,
No.
and Chair Replogo.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries with 4 aye votes and 1 no vote.
All right. So are there any agenda items for the next meeting?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
May we be excused?
Yes, you all may, you may go. We're gonna do our commissioner business
Okay.
Thank you
very
all
much.
for attending. Thank you for your kind way of speaking.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Aloha.
Aloha.
To your question, Mr. Chair, we have one agenda item on the December hearing, and that is for a rezone in Volcano. We will then have elections of officers for next year. So please give some thought to whom you would like to elect, or make sure you're here, because as is our standard practice, if you're not here, you're elected. At any rate, that's
And next year you can elect somebody who can read.
And maybe Christian, you can indicate who's terming out. I think I talked to John earlier, but
Yeah, that's correct. So there are three commissioners who, unless they agree to hold over until March, December will be their last hearing. That's Commissioner Clarkson, Commissioner Rafferty, and Chair Replogle.
They should hold
Makes me
over
want to cry.
after.
No kidding. I thought this year would never come.
The OG's got to hang over.
I'm perfectly willing to hold over until a replacement. I think it can only be 3 meetings, right?
Correct.
I'm perfectly willing to hold over until a replacement can be found.
Great.
Same with me.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your willingness and your service, and we'll work with Commissioner Rafferty offline and see where he's at with that. But at any rate, that's where we're at with the next hearing, and yeah, that's what I have to offer to you today.
Just, I do have a question. Has the process, 3 commissioners terming out, what the heck? Do they have people in waiting or going through the vetting process right now?
I'm aware of I'm aware that there's been active recruitment, and I'm aware of at least one commissioner one prospective commissioner being considered. Other than that, I would have to defer to the mayor's office, who's in charge of filling these boards and commissions. But hopefully we're in the process such that when those holdovers are finally termed out, that we'll have others to come on board. So we're not facing short commissions for votes.
I know my twin has applied. Anyway.
but just as a, I guess, procedural note is, if 3 commissioners' positions are left vacant, that leaves how many of us left? 1, 2,
4.
4.
Yeah.
So we would need a tiebreaker each time if there's a.
You would need 4 votes one way or the other on any agenda item. So failing that, you would have a lot of
long discussions.
That's a lot of lobbying. Yeah, so that's again, I believe the mayor's office is working on filling those positions and going through that process. So
thank you.
Okay, thank you. So our next scheduled monthly meeting will be Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 by interactive video conference via Zoom. If there's no further business, I will entertain a motion to end this happy event.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded, moved by Mr. Lynn, seconded by Mr. Clarkson and Mr. Aguinaldo. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and happy
Aye.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah.
Aloha.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you in December.
aloha. Thank you.
Yes, aloha.
Christian, man.
Yes, sir.